In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can add extra little details such as this venting that you see in this area and here on just very specific areas of the model. So in the last video, we took a look at how to make our own custom brushes, and I wanted to show you basically using the same techniques that we learned in that video, using this drag rectangle stroke type and making a custom alpha that is just black and white lines like this, how we can get this kind of vent system going on inside of our model. So the other thing I wanted to show you is if we go to the alpha palette, it's really easy to take any of these alphas. If you like an alpha on a brush, you can always export that out. You just go to the alpha palette that you see here, and you can say export, and you can save that thing out wherever you want, and you can open that up inside of Photoshop. So you can see here inside of Photoshop, this brush is just pretty simple. It's just basically white lines with black lines, and it's nice and hard. So then whenever we pull that into ZBrush and we use this on the model, let me find a place on one of the models here. I'm just going to go ahead and hold down Alt and click on this piece of the model, and then I'm going to drag out, and you can see how it would build up these different lines for us like that. But what if we want this to be in a very specific area and we want to make a shape out of it? Well, we can actually use something with the poly groups, and we can define something on our model for that. So I'm going to just switch over to the standard brush real quick. So I'm going to tap 1 for my hotkey, or just go ahead and select the standard brush, and then I'm going to build a mask on the model, and this mask is going to represent the area that I want this little grate to show up on. So I'm going to hold down Control and just draw onto the model. So it's going to draw right here on the shape, and I'll try to make something somewhat interesting like this, and I'll take Control and Alt, and then I can erase part of the mask here. So I'm just trying to make some kind of more mechanical kind of shape, and then I'm going to harden up this mask by holding down Control and Alt and clicking on the mask, and you can see how it hardens up that edge for us like that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on Polyframe so you can see what's going to happen here. If we have a mask drawn on their model, we can hit Control W, and that will turn that into a shape with polygroups. So we're going to get into this a little bit more later on whenever we are doing some of the hard surface portions of this, but we've got this shape that you see here, and we can use some of ZBrush's new polish features, polish by group, to kind of polish this thing up and then maybe even extrude it a little bit. So the way that you can kind of use this polish feature just on this little poly group here, you can hold down Control and Shift, you could select it, and that's going to isolate it. And if you hold down Control and click in the open viewport, that masks whatever is visible here. Now you can pull everything back, so you hold down Control Shift and just click in the open viewport once, and it'll bring back the entire model. Now we've got a mask just on that piece that we showed there. And if you want to inverse the mask, Control I to inverse that, and you can see now we've got this portion of the model. And if I zoom in a little bit, we can use that function to soften a mask by holding down Control and clicking on any part that's masked, and it's going to kind of soften this up. So basically what I want to do is I want to hold all the rest of the model, and then I want to run this smoothing algorithm just on this shape. But the reason I grew this thing out a little bit bigger than the poly group is because it'll start to smooth the edge on this shape and on this shape as well, but it'll leave everything else intact. So we've got just a little bit of bleed over for that. So to start sharpening these edges up in here, we can go to the tool area, and we can go to deformation, and then we're going to use this polish by feature, and it's got the little tick mark in here which tries to retain as much of the shape as possible and then harden up these edges on here. You can run it that way first, and if that's not enough, you can untick this little check here, and this one really has a huge effect over how it polishes up that shape. So you can already see from the last iteration that I just ran there, you can see how it's starting to affect the shape. Now if I took this little tick off and I run the polish by feature, you can see it's really going to have a big effect on corners, so it really starts to round out the shape. So just something to keep in mind, how you know, if you want to hold certain corners and things like that, you might have to mask it, or just be really careful about how far you push this thing. Okay, so I did all that just to build up this little shape here. I want to actually extrude this thing downward. So I'm going to put it on the Move Transpose tool, and we can click anywhere on the surface and it's going to build up this transpose line pushing out from whatever the surface normal is. So you can see the direction of here. It's going to take this from here. If we just click on the surface here, it gives us this nice kind of vector or this line based off of the normal of the surface. So we can just click right in here, and there's a nice tool within inside of these transpose tools that will allow you to mask out any polygroup automatically. So if you just hold down Control and click on this polygroup, it's going to mask everything out except for that polygroup right there. So I'm going to click somewhere close to the middle of this thing. So I could just drag this with this middle thing here and hold down Shift, and it'll constrain the axis to that line. So it's pushing the surface in, and that's pretty cool. The other thing we can do is if we hold down Control while we push right in here, it's actually going to extrude the surface. So it's going to build new geometry right in through here and actually make a really nice, crisp and clean new set of polys right in through here. So that's pretty cool. But if we take the polish by feature deformation that we just looked at and we run that on this, so it polishes up really nice here. But if we take our mask and we start to, you know, hold down Control and click on this so we get a wider range for this mask, and then we start to run the polish by feature, you'll see what's going to happen. It's going to really soften this out. So that might be a cool effect for you. You might be looking for some kind of, you know, visual like that. I'm going to soften it one last time like that, and then run the polish by feature one more time. So you might like that look, but if you wanted this edge to be nice and hard, we're going to have to do something to the geometry before we extrude it down. So I'm going to get it back to the spot that we were at before we extruded that, just hitting undo to get this back here. And I'm going to have to hide the rest of the model. I'm going to turn on Polyframe so we can see what's going on here. So hold down Control and Shift, and then just click on that polygroup. And then I'm going to go to Geometry and open that up, and under Edge Loop, there's this Group Loops. And if I turn this down to only one and take off this Polish feature on it, if I hit this Group Loops, it's going to make a really thin group all the way around this thing. So we just hit that once like this, and you'll see. So you can see how it built this really thin group for us, which is pretty cool, because now if we put it on the Move tool, I'll just hold down Control, click on this area, and it's going to mask out everything except for this first part here. And now if I just hold down Shift and drag through here, it's going to push this thing in just like what we had before. But if you notice, we've got this new poly group all the way around here. So if we hold down Control and soften that mask up, and we go to the deformation, and then we do polish by feature, you can see what's going to happen here. It polishes up nice and tight and gives this really nice hard edge for us along this area. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my mask. I'm just going to hold down Control and drag in the open viewport there, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So that took a while just to get to this point where we've got this area where it'd be nice if we had that kind of cool brush that we were talking about up here. Okay, so if we look at the polygon count and we look at this and we say maybe that's enough resolution for us to do this line, we could try it out. So I'm just going to use the functionality of that transpose tool again. So I'm just going to hold down Control and click here once just to get me my mask, and then I'll take it off that tool, and then we're going to load up that custom brush that I had. So if I'm pulling in some different brushes, it's actually sitting here. Something to note, if you've got like a standard brush or something already set and you start to pull brushes in over the top of it, it might override that. So you could just clone this brush like this, and if you go hover back over the top of it, you can see it's going to give it a new name. And then if you go to brush and do import or load brush, you haven't overwritten the default brush that sits with inside a ZBrush. Just a little side note, something that kind of happens and you might be wondering what happened to your brush at that point. So I'm going to tab B. I already have this brush loaded, and so with this I'm going to be able to click and drag out from the center here something like these lines. I'm going to turn off Polyframe so we can see what's going on. So the resolution is pretty good for this area, but if we start to zoom in, you can see this stair stepping starting to happen. So what we could do, I'm going to hit undo real quick, and I'm going to go back to this piece here. I'm going to get rid of my mask. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and just click on that poly group. And something that's kind of cool about this, I don't have any subdivision levels on this model because it was Dynamesh, and I just keep doing operations to it like this, slicing it up. If we don't have any subdivision levels under geometry, we can go ahead and hit Control D like we would be adding a new subdivision level, and it will divide just this area that's visible. It won't make a new subdivision level, but it will add geometry just in this area. So it is possible inside a ZBrush to do isolated pieces of geometry and add more geo in just certain areas. So say you don't need much geo throughout the body, but you want to do these fine details like this, you can show that piece and then hide everything else and then divide it, and then you get localized subdivisions. Well, at least more subdivided geometry in that area, so you can start using different brushes and things like that. So I had to pause the video because the poly count on this model is so high that it was taking a while to do that. If we turn on the Polyframe now, if we were able to get really close inside of here and take a look, you could see that it is divided at a higher level with inside of here, and it actually does a really cool job of dividing this area and still keeping everything matched up to the other parts on there. So again, we're going to just put it on the Transpose tool, hold on Control, and click on this piece that we want to add detail to, put it back on the Draw tool, and then now if I click and drag out with this brush, and I can hold down Shift if I want to constrain it to be straight. Let's do that again, click and drag it out, hold down Shift, and if we zoom in, it's not perfect, but it is better. So if I wanted to keep going on this, I could add another subdivision level on it and run that, and I could get this geo to look really, really nice. So again, I just wanted to show you this technique for building out certain areas that might have some paneling on it, and allow you to add just localized subdivisions so you can get this kind of detail that you're looking for in specific areas.